Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 5th of April, 2023, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish. We are delighted to be joined by David Scott, bringing us northern exposure from north of the border. And we're also joined by our nursing correspondent, Debi Evans. Plus, we have two very interesting guests with us today.
Okay, so let's get straight on. And David, the news from Scotland then. Here's Conor Gillies tweeting this out. Police evidence tent erected outside the home of former SNP exec Peter Murrell after he was arrested amid party finances investigation. And of course, that's not just his house, it's also Nicola Sturgeon's house. So it goes on to say the Glasgow property he shares with his wife, Nicola Sturgeon, is sealed off by detectives. And the police statement says this. A 58-year-old man was today, Wednesday, 5th of April 2023, being arrested as a suspect in connection with the ongoing investigation into the funding and finances of the Scottish National Party. The man in custody is in custody and is being questioned by Police Scotland detectives. Officers are also carrying out searches at a number of addresses as part of the investigation. A report will be sent to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service. The matter is active for the purposes of contempt of court, 1981. And the public are therefore advised to exercise caution if discussing this on social media. As the investigation is ongoing, we're unable to comment further. So in light of that threat from the police, what can you tell us?
Well, the underlying complaint was made by supporters of Scottish independence who donated money to an SNP campaign, which was raising funds for the next independence referendum campaign, and it raised £600,000. This gentleman felt that the fundraising campaign was very clear and that the money was ring-fenced raised specifically for and ring-fenced for the next independence referendum campaign, which obviously did not happen or has not yet happened. When the accounts of the SNP were published and there was something like £200,000 in the bank, people started to wonder where all the money had gone. And at least one gentleman put in a formal complaint to the police. This was widely mocked on social media and elsewhere by the supporters, by the, shall we say, the intellectual bodyguard of the SNP. All the kind of paid public intellectuals in Scotland who support the SNP were ridiculing this complaint. Well, it's now gone to the point where there's been an arrest of the former chief executive of the party, Peter Murrell, husband of Nicola Sturgeon. And we've gone from the new party leader, Humza Yousaf, talking about the SNP being a large tent, to a large tent, an evidence tent being camped outside Nicola Sturgeon's house. The raids are going on in other SNP premises and SNP headquarters. It is astonishing. And I would also point out that not only did Nicola Sturgeon resign only a short while ago, but the Chief Constable of Police Scotland also unexpectedly and suddenly resigned just before that. So there's been an awful lot of changes. We don't know how many of these things are related to the events of today. We obviously don't know. Peter Murrell has been arrested. We understand he's not yet been charged with anything. So we'll have to see how the process of the administration of justice proceeds. But astonishing events. And just one other thing I would say is the comment by Police Scotland there, essentially warning people about what they say in social media, is no idle threat, because Craig Murray, who was blogging, reporting on the trial of Alex Salmond, I thought in a very intelligent and informative and useful and helpful way, was convicted of contempt of court and sent to jail over his blogs. The accusation being that he had, in a jigsaw fashion, identified the complainants. But what he'd actually done is he'd revealed that all the people who raised complaints against Alex Salmond were part of Nicola Sturgeon's inner circle. And I think that piece of information was vital. It should have been known in the public domain, and was important for the people of Scotland to understand in order to assess what was happening to their political leaders and to their, indeed, police, judiciary and public prosecuting service. None of these things saved Craig Murray from having to spend time behind bars. So this threat from Police Scotland is no idle threat at all, and it's quite clear that drastic action would be taken against anybody, journalist or otherwise, saying the wrong thing about the higher echelons of the SNP and their leadership.
Yes.
I'll just add two things, David. One, of course, I think the jigsaw rule applies here, that even if you don't identify a particular person directly, if you share information via social media which links things together in order to point a finger, you can also be culpable and in deep trouble. So people should reflect on that. But the other thing that comes into my mind about this whole affair is how sad it is that at the moment we seem to go near the bigger parties. It's not unusual for there to be controversy about money coming in and where that money goes to. My mind goes back to UKIP in the very early days when there was huge controversy over a lot of funding coming into the Ashford call centre. But of course, we've also had the questions asked of the Tory party over large sums of money coming in from essentially Russian oligarchs. So not unusual for there to be controversy.
Okay, David, any final comments?
This is piling up a concern over the nature of governance in Scotland. We've had the Salmond affair, which was never really adequately resolved. And we've had multiple failures at the UK Supreme Court. We've had concerns over the way that they've adopted and absorbed the third sector, the charitable sector, in order to bolster Scottish Government policy, how they've captured the civil service in order to generate, bolster and propagate SNP policy. There are many, many things surrounding the SNP administration of the devolved government in Scotland that have been of great concern for a lot of time. Corrupt Scotland is the shorthand for all of this.
Yeah.
Not speaking about the current case specifically, but an overall view is corrupt Scotland is the shorthand for all of this. I think something needs to be done about it. I think we need a royal commission into the governance of Scotland. It is that bad. We do need to open the windows and actually let some fresh air in, let some sunlight in and see what's actually been going on. We know a lot of decisions are made without proper record keeping. We've found great difficulty getting answers to FOI requests. All of this sort of thing. There's a culture of secrecy, and many suspect a culture of corruption as well. We need to know, and this is just one more example of a culture which is extremely worrying. And I hope a broader overview will be taken of this, of the whole governance of Scotland, and something done so that the people of Scotland and elsewhere in the United Kingdom can actually understand what has been going on.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Okay, let's move on then to TikTok and the Information Commissioner's Office. So they released this press release yesterday. ICO fines TikTok £12.7 million for misusing children's data. So let's look and see what they said here. UK data protection law says that organisations that use personal data when offering information society services to children under 13 must have consent from their parents or carers. TikTok failed to do that, even though it ought to have been aware that under 13s were using its platform. TikTok also failed to carry out adequate checks to identify and remove underage children from its platform. So here is John Edwards, the Information Commissioner. This is what he had to say. There are laws in place to make sure our children are safe in the digital world as they are in the physical world. TikTok did not abide by those laws. As a consequence, an estimated 1 million under 13s were inappropriately granted access to the platform, with TikTok collecting and using their personal data. That means that their data may have been used to track them and profile them, potentially delivering harmful inappropriate content at their very next scroll. So I'm going to suggest that this is not really about TikTok. This is actually an extremely political decision by the Information Commissioner's Office. It's political in the sense that, first of all, it reinforces the narrative to justify the ongoing online safety bill, which is at committee stage still in the House of Lords. But also it justifies the anti-China narrative. I'll explain why I'm saying that in a second. It was mainly because I wrote to the Information Commissioner yesterday and said, could you tell me, please, whether or not the ICO has fined Facebook or Instagram for permitting under 13s to use their platforms? And if not, why not? Now, that's a paraphrase of what I wrote, but this was the response I got from the Information Commissioner's Office. So since the conclusion of our investigation into TikTok, they said, we published our children's code to help protect children in the digital world. It's a statutory code of practice aimed at online services such as apps, gaming platforms, and web and social media sites that are likely to be accessed by children. We've seen visible behavior change from companies since the children's code entered into force. Some of the changes we've seen are from companies include, one example, Google turned off ads for under 18s. Instagram and Epic Games are making improvements to parental controls, and Meta is developing new age assurance systems to improve identification of underage accounts and to improve age appropriateness of content. Now, you'll notice that none of those three items suggest that there are any fewer under 13 accounts on any of those platforms than there were when the children's code entered into force. We'll come on to that in a second. As with all of our work, they said, if we believe that people's rights aren't being respected and that this is causing harm or distress, then we'll investigate further. So what is the Children's Code? Well, it came into effect on the 2nd of September 2021, and this is what it says. You may have noticed changes to how children access or use certain websites, apps, games, or online products. This is because as of 2nd September 2021, online services need to follow a set of standards when using children's data. These standards are known as the Children's Code. But there's a problem here, because the question is, why choose TikTok? Was it because TikTok was the most egregious offender in this case? Or was it because there's, as I say, a political motivation in targeting a Chinese company? Well, let's have a look at this from Ofcom. This was published in July 2022. And in this report, entitled Children's Online User Ages Quantitative Research Study, they say for children aged 8 to 12 who used social media, the proportions with their own profile were 79% amongst Snapchat users, 72% for Facebook users, around 2/3 for TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and 43% for YouTube. And so the key point here is, Brian, very interested in your thoughts on this, because it seems clear to me that TikTok was targeted because TikTok appears right in the middle of that. Snapchat and Facebook way out on front with under 13s using their platforms, where their data is being hoovered up and being used for whatever purposes Snapchat and Facebook use them for. And I didn't see Facebook's, although Meta, according to the Information Commissioner, is doing something about this, is doing it very, very slowly, and it's not simply identifying accounts belonging to 13-year-olds and younger and removing them from their platforms, even though it should be. So, I'm interested in what you think.
Well, I'm going to say we're seeing more and more regulators being used to enforce political agenda. And later in the news today, we're going to be talking about the MHRA, possibly one of the worst offenders. But the idea that the TikTok is being deliberately targeted for a political reason rather than to protect children, I think is a perfectly reasonable starting place. And it'll be interesting to see what the Information Commissioner comes back with on it.
So where does that take us?
Well, if we can't protect children's safety online, can we protect it in the real world? And I think we're going to suggest not. So, Debi, over to you. This is another incredible article from the Daily Mail.
Well, I mean, I just don't know how much worse it has to get, really. I mean, with all of this drag agenda, and now we've got children learning the art. Apparently, there's an art of drag. And so the Mail ran this story just recently of what's been going on in Northern California. And this was a 2-night workshop which was organised by the Young Actors Theatre, and it was billed as a safe place for campers to create their own drag personas. So this is the way that we're going, and then we've also got drag holiday camps, like summer camps coming up, and one in Canada that's coming up with massive, great big banner. I mean, you can't miss that, can you? Bright pink and bright purple. And you can see there that it's been supported by the City of Vancouver, the Canada Council for Arts, British Columbia. You can see them all there. But this is a junior drag camp, ages 7 to 11, and then a teen drag camp. So this is the way we're going. And for anybody that thinks that the UK is exempt, we're not, because next week I'll feature another company which is called Tart Productions, which is led by Ginger Tart, I believe, and she will be starting drag shows and queer camps for kids in the UK starting this year. So that's what we've got to look forward to.
And that surely, Debbie, is grooming. For the man on the Clapham omnibus, that must be grooming of children.
I mean, I'm speechless. I'm utterly speechless, and I see this whole trans agenda, drag agenda. I see, we're looking at transhumanism, and we're looking at transgender, we're looking at drag acts, we're looking at drag queer camps for children. And what parent in their right mind would send their child to one of those? Really? What times are we living in?
Very, very strange times. I wasn't able to read the full article in the Daily Mail, so I don't know whether the Daily Mail is criticising it. But of course, if the Daily Mail is promoting events that are happening in America, then actually what they're doing, well, I've used the word, they're promoting rather than warning people what's coming. But to be fair, I need to get my nose into that article, and we'll encourage our viewers and listeners to look at that Daily Mail article. Now, on this subject, I'd like to say a very big thank you to a long-term viewer of the UK column who's based down in Cornwall. And the individual, I can say it was a lady, highlighted this document to me a few days ago. It's by Policy Exchange, Asleep at the Wheel, an examination of gender and safeguarding in schools, by a lady called Lottie Moore, with a foreword by Rosie Duffield MP. Now, I have spent a bit of time on this document. This is the author's details, a research fellow at Policy Exchange, previously worked as policy manager at Public Policy Projects, as well as holding research positions at SOAS and University of London. She's a master's degree in Society and Belief from Oxford University. That's a tremendous degree, and a bachelor's in political theology from Bristol. So what is this about? Well, it's about what children are being taught in schools, and many people have taken it in a positive way, in that they believe that there's a real attempt by the author and the MP, Rosie Duffield, to alert the public as to what's happening. I'm not so convinced, because I think it's more subtle. However, the document does do some good in highlighting things that I think our audience need to be aware of. Now, I've just pulled this out from the middle, but they're talking about Stonewall. This particular section starts by 2015. Stonewall had been endorsed by thousands of schools in UK and had a close working relationship with many government departments. Having been vetted and cleared under a very different aim, there was little to stop their new agenda being adopted in a vast network of schools, academy trusts and councils, despite having undergone a fundamental change of strategy. So on one hand, the document is sort of just spelling it out quite casually that Stonewall has been doing all this work, but it does raise some questions that there's been a strategy. If I blow this section up, we can see a bit more about this. The conflation of their LGBT mission with their new mission for transgender rights enabled Stonewall to retain their influence. In 2015, the Department for Education and the GEO announced a joint $2 million for 8 organisations with the aim of eradicating HBT bullying I think I'll define that in a minute. We'll come on to that, hopefully. Stonewall received the largest share of the fund, nearly 500,000. So we're just put in here their new mission. Well, who are they? Who are these people that have been allowed to come into schools to tell children what they think our children should know? This is the meat of the problem. But let's bring in this graph, also from the document. It says 52% of schools stated that they'd used a provider, charity or commercial organisation to provide lessons or resources on gender identity. So what sort of things does the document highlight coming into the school? Well, here in section 7, how are schools dealing with this issue? Terms to avoid: transgendered, biologically male, female. These terms oversimplify a complex subject. Now, if you really think about what's going on here, there's some very dangerous stuff being put in front of children. Sexual and gender identities and a whole list of things. Children should be able, according to the people who produce this table, children should be able to define at least 5 gender identities. So this is, in my view, this is programming of children to take them in a particular direction, and this document is highlighting how it's being done. Here's the gender-bred person, gender identity, gender expression, and I'll leave people to freeze the screen and have a look at it. But of course, we can be sure that children are not being told that life is as simple as men and women in a happy relationship to produce more children. So here's the cover for that document again. Now, the sharp-eyed UK column viewer noticed that there was this particular reference in the document itself. And this is coming on to transgender guidance, which is being used in Cornwall. And if we go to that actual document itself, here it is, Schools Transgender Guidance. The editor's names there, Steve Cannon from the Intercom Trust, and Devon and Cornwall Police. And I found this very, very interesting, because you say, well, we've got a charity, what restrictions have we got on that charity, and the police deciding what's going to be taught in schools. But if you do notice at the bottom, we've also got Cornwall County Council logo, or Cornwall Council as it's known now, on the right. But it appears that the editors do not include Cornwall Council themselves. If we look at the introduction, the purpose of this guidance is to deeper embed good practice in the field of transgender work in schools and colleges and minimise distress and disruption to pupils, students and colleges. But in fact, if you look at how this is being created, it is an agenda. It's not good guidance. This is a proactive agenda to push the trans agenda. Here are the signatories, and we've got Trevor Doughty, Director of Children's Schools and Families in Cornwall Council. We've got the Intercom Trust, which we can highlight for you here, Dr. Michael Halls. And we've got Assistant Chief Constable Sharon Taylor from Devon and Cornwall Police. I find this a very sinister range of people who are able to get into schools and in front of our children without parents really being aware of what's happening. But if we look at the Intercom Trust and encourage people to go and look at their website, Together We Are Stronger. This is effectively a lobbying organisation. It's a community-led charity that aims to build a southwest region where people are treated with respect, celebrated, and where vibrant LGBT plus communities live with real equality. So this is not a balanced agenda. This is a very biased agenda in favour of the LGBT communities. But of course, this isn't really declared in the document, which is talking about balance in putting things across. If we look at some of the people involved, this is the chair, pronouns he, him, his. And interestingly, if you look through his CV, he's talking about all sorts of roles with the Gay Police Association, Cornwall Race Equality Council, Cornwall Equality and Diversity, LGBTQ Youth Cornwall. So this man heavily involved in what would appear to be positive steps to put across this particular agenda, but the public largely, parents largely aware. And if we introduce another gentleman here, Adam, pronouns they, them, theirs, but we've got a psychoanalytic psychotherapist in private practice, particularly interested in queerness and the alienating structure of a normative society. My question would be, is that gentleman's particular personal and professional interests, are those the interests that are actually being put in front of children in order to get children to engage in those same interests? Debi, I'm watching your face as I'm speaking. Would you like to just comment on that one briefly?
I mean, where to start? I mean, the first thing I'll say is that the first name that pops up at me straight away was Trevor Doughty. I've got personal experience of Trevor Doughty, and I know of children in Cornwall that have been physically and mentally abused under the care or the supervision on Trevor Doughty's watch. He was shipped in from another area and he was head of children's services for quite a long time. So the minute I saw that name, Brian, alarm bells were ringing in my head, like big alarm bells. And it's very concerning for everyone, specifically here in Cornwall, because this is happening right now. And do parents know what's happening to their children when they leave them at the school gate? Because once they're in school, you've got no control or even knowledge half the time of what your children are being taught. So, yeah, quite a lot to say on that. But Trevor Doughty, red alarm, big red flags.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Okay, if you like what the UK Column does, you'd like to support us, please head over to community.ukcolumn.org. There are options to help us out there, and that would be very much appreciated. You can pick something up at the UK Column shop. But please do share material on the various platforms, including ukcolumn.org and ukcolumnextracts.co.uk. A further reminder that on Sunday, the 23rd of April, the Alternative View team are running a virtual event, which we're helping them stream, and that is about smart cities and the surveillance agenda. Pippa King, John Kitson, Mark Anderson, David Devine speaking at that. Very well worth attending.
And a lot of work by the AV team, Ian Crane's original team, in order to get AV up and producing the live events. And of course, the first day event in October later this year.
And a reminder that the No to Ultra Low Emission Zones, No to ULEZ event taking place in Trafalgar Square on Saturday, the 15th of April. That starts at 12 p.m. Trafalgar Square. Get along to that if you possibly can.
Okay, and Debi, I think you've got a little advert for your blog here.
Oh, just a quick advert. Yes, thank you, Brian, for my blog. Yes, we're into the age of prosthetics, everyone. So if you want to know, or you want to know how to get your third thumb, no, I'm really not joking, do have a look at my blog, because that's coming up. And the cost to dye, it's very, very expensive to dye these days. So if you want to know that, that's in my blog. And also tomorrow we'll be screening an interview that I did with Jenna Platt, the amazing nurse that walks and talks from Stoke. And it was a meeting of minds. It was her nursing and my nursing back in my day. And it was an amazing interview. And I think actually between us, we can probably put everything to rights. So please watch out for that interview tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow
at 1 o'clock, ukcolumn.org/live. Well, Brian, another event.
Well, this was sent in to us very timely. It's No to 15-Minute Cities. Debbie Hicks, Piers Corbyn and Jonathan Tilt. Jonathan recently interviewed from the Vote Freedom Project. So Saturday, the 29th of April at 12 p.m, people gathering New Street, Huddersfield, obviously to make their views felt about 15-minute cities. So very encouraged by this. And the person who sent this to me said, Huddersfield is not a place that gets a lot of mention. So we're going to give Huddersfield a mention today and say well done for the team there for standing up. Now, Debi, it's over to you. And we've got a guest today. Would you like to introduce our guest?
indeed. We have Cheryl Granger with us today, and I'm sure everybody will remember Cheryl from the MHRA board meeting. Is that where we're going? Yes? No? We're not?
Well,
Brian?
No, we were going to introduce Sandi first of all.
Oh, sorry.
To obviously
You carry on.
comment on the 15-minute cities. So I know you have a lot of information in your head. No problem there. Sandi, welcome to UK Column, and we really wanted to say to you, well done for all your good work in Glastonbury, and talking to the Glastonbury Town Council about what's coming. So welcome to UK Column. Tell us what you've been up to and how you think things are going at the moment.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that was all a big... I had no idea I was being filmed. I thought I was only going to speak for 3 minutes. Someone else had spoken about the 15-minute cities, my friend Leela, who'd done an amazing job. And I thought, well, what do I talk about? So I just went for it because I've had a long-standing kind of battle with the Glastonbury Greens for over 10 years. And so I kind of gave it to them, and they just actually just listened, which was interesting. And I gave some documents out, and I had no idea that it would gain so much traction. Of all the stuff that I've been doing over the last 15 years, those 15 minutes did more than anything else I've ever done, which was extraordinary. So since then, there's been a resounding silence from the council. They promised us a meeting, and they said they wanted to get a citizens' assembly together, which is not the best way. That's all Delphi technique, as you know. So I happened to collar the mayor in the pub the other evening, and it was quite shocking because I collared him and I said, "Look, you haven't answered any of our emails." Incidentally, they went unitary on April the 1st. So no, he's not the mayor anymore. We've now got the deputy mayor, who is actually an XR. She's now the mayor. And nobody's answered any of the emails that any of us have sent. So I collared him in the pub and I said, "You haven't answered any of your emails." And he said, No, I haven't looked at my emails because I'm in a new relationship and I'm all loved up. And I said, "Look, never mind about that. This is important. We're at war here." And he said, "Well, actually, I don't understand." He said, "I don't understand all this thing about 15-minute cities because they haven't even rolled it out." And I looked at him blankly and I said, "Well, hang on a minute. What about they're trialing it in Oxford, Cambridge, Canterbury, other places? It's caused devastation." And it's really good that we know about this and we talk about this. And he just looked blankly. He said, "I didn't know that. I didn't know it was being trialled." And I said, "Well, people have died in ambulances trying to get through to hospitals. People's livelihoods have been devastated." And he just didn't have a clue, and basically then had a go at me saying that I had created him to receive hate mail in his inbox because I've divided the town. Apparently, I've made and I said, "No, people have just woken up. I had no idea 200 people would turn up at the council chamber because people are worried about this." And he just batted it off, saying I was creating fear. And I just said, "This is rubbish. People are just waking up, and you need to play catch up. All of you need to play catch up." Anyway, the result of it is that I've got involved with a really amazing set of a grassroots organisation called ukcitizen.org, and we're creating packs, legal packs, everything to challenge net zero in every town council in this country. And so those packs should be ready by tomorrow. I've got to work a bit more on it today. We've got this wonderful lawyer called Jane Lord. She's in California, but she lives in Yorkshire. She's helping create the legal side of things. We're going into the whole lie that we've been told on climate change, and we're going to present these packs to every town council in the UK. I know that democracy is dead, but if people get behind this, and really since we've advertised this, it's gone viral, and there's people popping up all over the country saying, "We want to get involved. We want to address our town councils," and that can be only a good thing. We need numbers. Numbers will win this. So that's kind of the down.
Sandi, thank you very much for that. Can I just ask, any interest from local media as to what's been going on? Has anybody come to speak to you? No.
Not at all. The planters were something that came up in the town council meeting because the mayor and the council approved these massive planters last year that appeared in the town. We all knew what they were for, because we're clued up. We thought these are barriers to stop the roads, to block the roads. And of course, we did bring it up in that council meeting. And the mayor was so funny. He said, I had no idea. It was a big shock to me when they turned up. They were too big. And we said, but you saw the drawings, you paid for them. You must have known how big they were. We actually decided that we weren't having them in the high street, that they had to be put in the car park. And they are still there. And we've asked for them to be removed. They haven't been removed yet. But we said they're ugly, they're an eyesore, they're massive, and we don't really want them. And they paid a lot of money to have them made. The councils are making these decisions. They declared a climate emergency without recourse to us. All their net zero policies are no recourse to the people. We need to challenge this. All of us need to challenge this, and we need that in numbers. We need people to turn up at town halls and just say, we didn't agree to this. We have evidence to prove that it's actually not. It's going to destroy businesses and everything around us. So this is really what our mission is at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, and we know there is an effect. Thetford is another place. We've just mentioned Huddersfield. So it is extremely interesting that the public does appear to be engaging with this particular subject, 15-minute cities, in a way that we haven't seen them engage with what we might think are other very important subjects. So this has got to be good, and it must be good that people are able to get the facts as to what's happening before they go and speak to their local councils. Would you like to suggest anything to the UK column audience? Things they could do, or things you'd recommend they do or don't do?
Do go on to ukcitizen.org, join up, form a group in your, because it's a whole nationwide. There's different groups all joining ukcitizen.org. These are literally, it is a proper grassroots organisation. It's people with ordinary jobs who are concerned about their cities, who don't like what's happened in all this trial in Canterbury and Oxford, and can see through the nonsense. So those are unbelievable. These are fake trees, apparently, aren't they? These things.
The viewers can't see it yet.
Just before we move on to that, I just wanted to ask you one more thing, Sandi, just for people that don't know, because I'm sure quite a few people don't know. Yeah. You said at the beginning of that Glastonbury had turned into a unitary authority on the 1st of April. Yeah. Can you just let people know what that means?
Well, it's all to do with this kind of it's regionalisation. So a lot of the town councils eventually will close. I mean, this is how it's going to be, and they've split up the UK into bigger regions, and they're calling it unitary. It's actually a way of keeping the people further away from the decision making, and this is what they're trying to do. I mean, it's happened all over America, and it really is to try and shut us down and free speech, and to move us away further from the decision making. And they've also got it's all tied up with the covenant of smart city mayors, because really what they really want us all to do is to be in what kind of sort of, I suppose you call it, urban environments. They want us out of the countryside, and they'll figure out ways of doing that. Zoonotic diseases, whatever. We've got silly things coming along the pipeline that we know about, and so really they're trying to move people out of rural areas into urbanized areas where there will be under the smart city mayors who it will be devolving into more power for the smart city, or what they call the metro mayors, and also they've got another lot which are directly elected mayors. And I think that's where a lot of the mayors who are in town councils now, if they're going to be career politicians and they're into this whole green movement, they will be joining all of that, because it's all about the green policies that they're trying to bring in to really control us all. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sandi, and you're going to be joining us in extra time so we can have some more discussion on this. And well, let's go back to Debi, because, well, at least they're getting real trees proposed there in Glastonbury. But what are you seeing coming in?
Oh, well, I mean, it doesn't get any more unbelievable than this, really. So, I mean, Sandi, I'm really sorry, but your planters, they've got to be better than what's coming, which is liquid trees. I mean, do you know what? All I'm going to say is, you can see the picture on screen. Shall we run VT? There's a very short video clip which might show people what
Debi,
these liquid trees are. Do you have it?
Well, unfortunately, we don't. But we will cover it another time. Yeah.
Okay, well, just to let you know then, this is microalgae. It's all to do with oxygen production, and these are big plastic tanks. It started off in Serbia, apparently for clean air, because the air pollution's so bad, we've got to have these liquid trees. So I don't know what to say.
No.
I don't know how much weirder it can get, to be honest.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, and the next part is that you've been having a look at Natural England.
Well, who's heard of Natural England? You know, I thought I had heard of them because it's one of those names, you know, like the National Trust. You kind of think you know about it. But I didn't actually know that this department existed. And let me just tell you a few very quick facts about Natural England. They've got a budget of 198 million. They're 90% controlled by DEFRA and funded by DEFRA. They're branded as the executive non-departmental public body sponsored DEFRA. They've got 2,000 staff and their HQ is in York. Marion Spain is the CEO. Now, she's got environmental agency background and Imperial College. That reminds me of Neil Ferguson and many others. And also the other chap that's in charge is Tony Jr., child campaigner of Friends of the Earth. Now,
yeah, I'm afraid we've
Looks
lost.
like we've got some problems with your sound, Debi.
Yeah, we've lost Debi for the moment. So let's. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Well, we can just go through this segment here. Just 2 seconds. We're having an interesting news today. So Debi talking about what's happening with Natural England, but the Guardian here talking about what's happening on Dartmoor. You've mentioned this, Mike, a few days ago. Tory MPs and farmers in a clash with Natural England over Dartmoor sheep. And this seems to be an initiative to actually strip out what is incredibly historic animal husbandry on Dartmoor, the Dartmoor ponies and sheep, and a lot of worry amongst local farmers. I've got another report here from Cornwall Live on this. This is Moore's plan leaves Cornwall farm families fearing for their livelihoods. So there's a lot to discuss here, but of course we need to ask, where has this huge organisation come from and what is its real agenda? Have we got you back, Debi?
you have, I'm sorry, I'm wondering if I live in Syria. The internet just went down completely, so there was no reception, so I apologise. So no, what I was going to point out really was Natural England. It seems that they're seizing farmland. You know, many farmers, especially in Cornwall and Devon, are saying that Natural England are saying, we're going to seize your farmland. You can't any longer farm it for agricultural purposes because we want to use it for rewilding. So this is just another thing that's coming in that's possibly Sandi's talking about to get us all out of rural areas and to get us into cities. But I'd never heard of Natural England before, but they're a very, very big organisation. One to keep an eye on, I think.
Okay, I was just going to add that many years ago, the government brought in triple SI, areas of special scientific interest, and good farming land on farms and estates was designated triple SI overnight, and farmers were not allowed to use them.
The WHO has revised its guidance. Also, quickly flipping on to something that we've been warning about for a very long time. It was in the NHS long-term plan, and here we are now looking at personal budgets. Now, they're starting to roll these out now. Personal budgets aren't anything new. They've been around for quite a long time, mainly for people with vulnerabilities, but they're very, very complicated. It basically means that you're rationed. You get given a specific budget for your care package, in inverted commas, but then you almost have to become an accountant. You have to keep receipts, you have to justify what you've spent on. And if we're all going to get personal budgets rolled out, how many GP appointments will that mean a year? How many operations if we need them? What kind of level of care will we get? So personal budgets are going to be a thing for the future. So watch this space. And then anybody, please, that's coming down to the...
Well, there we are. She's going to say anybody who's coming down to the southwest, you're being warned of NHS pressures from Easter. So the story about the pressure on the NHS, the collapsing NHS, is continuing. We'll leave it there. Debi, hopefully we'll get you back in extra time and we can have a sensible conversation on high technology in 2023.
Yes, third world country we're turning into. But anyway, right, let's go to Finland. Go to Belgium, actually, and NATO headquarters. And the BBC was extremely excited about the fact that it was such a sunny day and the gleaming building, the gleaming NATO headquarters, was auguring in Finland's new membership to NATO. So they joined NATO yesterday and they raised the flag and played the national anthem. It was fantastic stuff. So we have a little bit of video here of the Finnish foreign minister handing the various paperwork over to Antony Blinken. Let's have a look.
Finland's instrument of accession to the North Atlantic Treaty. Please, Secretary Blinken.
Thank you very much. Well, with receipt of this instrument of accession, we can now declare that Finland is the 31st member of the North Atlantic. Thank you, Pekka. I'm delighted to receive this on behalf of Finland.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we welcome Finland to the alliance.
So there we go. That was extremely exciting. Finland has joined. But in the meantime, Jens Stoltenberg was busy also looking at members from the Indo-Pacific region. So that's not the correct video you have there, Stephanie. If we have the other Stoltenberg one, that's the one. Brilliant. Let's have a listen to what he had to say, because it's not just Ukraine and Russia that we've got to worry about.
We highly value the partnership with the Indo-Pacific partners of NATO, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea and Japan. And in a more dangerous and unpredictable world, it is even more obvious that security is not regional, security is global. What happens in your region, what happens in the Indo-Pacific matters for Europe, and what happens in Europe matters for you. And I think the war in Ukraine demonstrates this very clearly with its global ramifications. The fact that we also see that China and Russia are standing closer together makes it just even more important that we are standing together as partners, NATO allies, and you as four highly valued partners.
So NATO expansion, not just in Europe, but also into the Southeast Asia as well.
I think it's very clear this is the rules-based international order marching towards a global military system. And of course, anybody who's not in that system will be the enemy. This is where it's going.
Yes. Now, water quality, and you might wonder why water quality has got anything to do with Russia or China or NATO, but let's just listen to Therese Coffey yesterday, who was talking about how they're going to deal with pollution in water.
We all agree pollution is simply not acceptable. So we will penalise polluters, making it easier for regulators to do that job. We'll get farmers the kit and support they need to manage the slurry and reduce the runoff. And we will tackle every other source of pollution head on, including runoff from our roads, banning those wet wipes that have plastic in them. It's great that some retailers have already got the message from previous signals, and we're going to complete the job by delivering the regulation.
So she was on Radio 4 this morning explaining how they're going to ban wet wipes. And it just...
This is bad.
Oh, it's very bad. It's very bad because, of course, the next time those nasty Russians come and try to poison us all with weapons-grade Novichok, what are we going to do about it? Because if you remember in 2018, the advice from Dame Sally Davies, the Chief Medical Officer, was that if you got some Novichok on your clothes or your bag or something, my advice for any individual, wash your clothes and wipe down any personal items, shoes and bags with cleansing or baby wipes before disposing of them in the usual way. So if they get rid of their wet wipes, we're in trouble. But anyway, the question or the issue that she didn't raise, which I'm going to raise now, is the issue of face masks, because of course plastics in baby wipes and microplastics being generated by washing machines is a very bad thing, except when it comes to pandemic face masks, which Natural History Museum
which are everywhere.
They're absolutely
you can
everywhere.
still see them everywhere.
Yes.
In urban areas and in the countryside. We're awash.
Disgraceful pollution.
Indeed.
So.
Right, well, if that's not bad enough, I'm afraid we've got to give a health warning to our viewers now, because I am going to bring Tony Blair on screen. This is a little story that's been happening in the background, and we haven't really paid much attention to it until today, but this is the London Insider. Tony Blair told to disappear quietly amid World Economic Forum links. The World Economic Forum should separate themselves from Mr. Blair if it wants to maintain some type of credibility, according to Tory MP Lee Anderson. So we're going to call it the political rumour mill, but we were very interested in where we've been hearing this story, where it's come from. The suggestion is that he could be in the running to take over from Klaus Schwab. I'm sure this will fill most of our viewers with complete horror, but it's fascinating to watch this, some details on this little story. This is the MP who's quoted there, the Ashfield MP, and he is actually working with the Express at the moment, answering questions from the public. So viewers might be interested to know that they can apparently write into the Express to Lee Anderson and get a response, ask an MP. But this is the sort of thing he was saying about Mr. Blair. We're going back to January 2023. I encourage the World Economic Forum to separate themselves from Mr. Blair if it wants to maintain some sort of credibility. Tony Blair was responsible for the state of Britain's economy in 2010 and even admitted his government failed to understand the complexity of the financial sector or foresee that it was on the brink of crisis. So some pretty basic Tory Labour comment there, but it's certainly pointing a finger at Tony Blair. He also dragged us into a pointless war that cost 179 British lives on the battlefield. So this man needs to disappear quietly to a place where he has no influence at all. Well, I think many people would agree with that. If the World Economic Forum wants to have any sort of credibility, they will distance themselves from this out-of-touch political has-been. He might be a has-been, but he seems very dangerous. Let's have a look at this little video clip of Tony Blair talking about unforgivable politics.
Albert was talking earlier about the politics of the situation, and I think there's sort of unforgivable politics and forgivable politics. The unforgivable politics is turning a public health issue into a political issue. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the onset of COVID, people saying, well, what do you think of the politics of COVID? How serious is this disease? And I was like, well, you asked me about the politics of the disease. I mean, it's a disease. I don't know. You go and ask someone who knows. So what's unforgivable is turning things like whether you wear a face mask or not into a political issue. That is unforgivable and stupid, right? But there's a forgivable politics, which you see also, by the way, when it comes to Russia and Ukraine and energy prices. If you're a politician and you're facing an election and you've got the ability to vaccinate your people, you're going to vaccinate your people first, right? So the question really is, how do you create a situation in which that more forgivable political anxiety is dealt with by a plan that allows you now to work on what are the elements you're going to need in order for this to be dealt with in the future equitably and properly.
So lying in order to create a war and killing thousands of people, damaging the lives of millions of people, this is not a problem. But make sure you get the vaccination and the COVID-19 policy in. Well, that's one face of Tony Blair. Let's just go back a little bit and have a look at him defending the World Economic Forum.
Let me ask you finally, as our final question, about the point of Davos all these years later. You know very well that Davos is considered the sort of hobnobbing of the elite, the very people who threw so many millions of people around the world into the calamity that they find themselves in now and led to the rise of populism. Let me just play you this little soundbite from a guy who's kind of gone viral right now, Anand Giridharadas, who's just written this book, you know, Winner Takes All, the charade of the global elites. Look what he just told me.
I think Davos should end. I think it should be canceled this year and should end going forward. It is a family reunion for the people who, in my view, broke the modern world.
I mean, you can't argue with that, right?
I can. Look, it's the easiest line in the world to make, by the way. You know, I tell you what I do when I come to Davos. So later today, I'll be meeting 3 of my presidents from Africa. I don't think they broke the economic system. I'll be meeting a whole lot of people from multilateral institutions who work in the developing world. I'm here because my institute, which is a not-for-profit institute, works in some of the poorest parts of the world trying to help them. And, you know, to be fair, the people who come here, they're discussing serious issues. So it's the easiest play in the world. Say, oh, you know, all these people are coming along here, the global elite and so on. And by the way, you know, these arguments about cultural identity and nationalism, in my experience, you've got elites on either side of the argument. So, you know, Davos, it is what it is. It's an opportunity for people to come and network on issues of importance. And, you know, some people, you know, may come here who are billionaires from different parts of the world, but other people come because some of the issues that they're discussing here are important.
So Tony Blair in that clip, but of course Keir Starmer also believes the same. Why should we be paying attention to the World Economic Forum and Tony Blair's involvement in it, if indeed that's going to happen? Let's just, beg your pardon, let's just jump back to this. This is June 2020, The Guardian reporting Prince Charles, but pandemic is chance to reset the global economy. And if we put in a bit of detail there, it says that the coronavirus crisis represents an opportunity to reset the global economy and prioritise sustainable development without further damaging the planet. So this is Prince Charles at the World Economic Forum. And I just want to highlight here that he was emphasising that it was the private sector that would be the engine of so-called recovery. So in bed with Schwab, but is the king now loyal to the British nation or the globalists in the World Economic Forum? And I would say pretty strongly it's the latter.
Well, indeed, because, well, his son has just decided that one young global leader is going to be given a new job. So let's bring her on screen. Jacinda Ardern has joined the Earthshot Prize. We're delighted to welcome Jacinda Ardern to the Earthshot Prize Board of Trustees. Her lifelong commitment to sustainable development and climate action aligned powerfully with our ambition to protect and restore our planet by 2030. We're honoured that she joins us in this new role. And of course, last year, at the end of last year, she did give a speech at the Earthshot Prize. If anybody can tolerate it, it's available on YouTube. I don't recommend it.
Do you think she'll be on about 30,000 a year?
I think you haven't got enough zeros on that, perhaps.
Okay, well, it's a clown world, but it's a serious one. We'll end with a little meme, which I think Debi came up with. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a little Easter duckling. Why did the Easter bunny fire the duck? He kept quacking all the eggs, which is a bit, yes, okay. And then we've got our old friend Joe, Creepy Joe Biden, and we've got Easter eggs in the background, but he's saying Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes.
So the caption there from Debi is one already locked up, one needs locking up. I think we better leave it there. We're going to say a very big thank you. Well, David will be with us shortly in extra time, but David Scott and Debi and our 2 guests, Cheryl and Sandi, who will also be coming into extra time. So if you're a signed up member with UK Column, join us for extra time. But I think we're going to have a very, very interesting discussion. Lastly, a big thank you. couple of days ago, we showed flowers that have been sent through to UK Column. That was truly lovely. What we've also received Devon Heaven, which has come all the way. I have to put my glasses on here. It's come all the way really from down under. So Julia and Christian, thank you very much for sending us a very delicious. Do we admit what it is, Mike?
Oh, cream teas.
Scones, jam and cream for a traditional Devon clotted cream.
The arguments
tea.
in the UK Columns office this morning about whether the cream or the jam goes on first, of course.
Which we're not going to get involved in.
No, we'll keep that for extra too. Just a quick reminder, no news on Friday or Monday, but we will be playing out some videos that you haven't seen before in the normal live stream slot, so do watch those.
Okay, join us in a few minutes' time for UK Column Extra. Thank you. Bye-bye.